Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the new film Brightburn. This film is produced by James Gunn, who worked on the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and it's written by one of his brothers, I believe, too. But in this film, Brightburn, you guys, what it's essentially about is it's basically the Superman story in reverse. So rather than Superman coming to Earth, becoming Earth's protector, being our good guy, being the superhero we all look up to, he comes to Earth as this evil, superpowered, strong, everything we kind of know about Superman, but he's kind of this evil, strong boy that seems to be a part of an alien race of some kind that is trying to take over Earth and potentially wipe out the human race if he's lucky enough to succeed in that. So basically, Brightburn is kind of a more sinister, evil version of Superman. It takes that whole story that we know and love from Superman and it kind of flips it on its head and turns all the characters we once knew good who are now bad, and all the characters that we might potentially now remember as bad is now good, and kind of flip it on its head and turn it into something different. But for the most part, throughout this film, we follow this child around who was adopted into these parents who had a hard time basically making their own child. So they find this basically evil version of Clark Kent, pretty much. Brandon Breyer, I think his name is in this, and he finds out about his powers. He's getting picked on all the time. People aren't accepting him, so he basically decides to use these powers that he was brought here to do in his spaceship and use it for evil to kind of benefit it for himself for his own personal use and take out all the people that are kind of not accepting him and making fun of him and want to put lawsuits on him when he's doing something that they really didn't like and stuff like that. So this is all over the course of the film Brightburn. So overall, guys, I actually kind of like this film a lot. It's not amazing, but it is good though. I think there's a lot of good things about it. I always like to see kind of a superhero story, try something different, kind of view it from a different lens, view it from a different angle, and give us something different. And I think Brightburn is one of those kind of films where it takes something that we're really familiar with. It takes a superhero idea that we're very familiar with too, and just really flip it on its head, be something different, be more of a horror film over a superhero film, and just once again really try to be different with what it's doing. And I think Brightburn succeeds at that very well. So for my positives and negatives of Brightburn, I really do like this whole evil take on Superman. There's even a character here that kind of reminded me a little bit of Lois Lane, but in a more creepy, sinister, twisted way. Two characters in here that kind of really loosely, very, very loosely, kind of represent the ideology of Lex Luthor, let's say. So there's a lot of things from, if you're really familiar with the Superman story and comics, or just kind of evil takes on those characters and ideas and stuff like that. So I really thought it worked for this film. There's definitely scenes here where they're trying to make it feel more like a horror film, and at most times it does succeed at that pretty well. There's also a lot of James Gunn isms. James Gunn himself did not direct this film, but like I said, he is known for the Guardians of the Galaxy films. He also did another superhero film called Super many, many years ago, and a lot of people kind of compared that to Kick Ass back when that came out. Um, but there's a lot of James Gunn isms here. This kind of has a weird sense of humor at times. Definitely a lot of superhero elements that we've seen him do in like Guardians of the Galaxy. Kind of a sick, twisted sense of humor. Uses of blood and gore when they're kind of asked for it and it's more violent. So that part of James Gunn is pretty present here, even though he didn't direct this movie. You can definitely tell his brother and himself kind of added their own special touches to that in the script with their involvement with that and kind of their little special touch with that aspect as well. I also thought actor and actress who played the adoptive parents in this, Elizabeth Banks and David Denman, I think the name of the father was. I thought the two of them were very convincing. You really could tell that they were trying to make a child and they just couldn't do it. So this was kind of a gift from God, quote unquote, until they really find out what this young boy is capable of. Another thing to note too, it's called Brightburn, but the boy's superhero identity is not called Brightburn. He just lives in the Brightburn County, I guess, of Kansas. I guess there is a Brightburn County of Kansas, I guess, or at least in the context of this movie, there is. So the character's name is not Brightburn, even though the trailers and the marketing kind of make it look like that. It's the name of the place that the story takes place in Kansas. But anyway, they take in this boy, and they do the best they can as parents, but he really is kind of out there, really messed up, really weird, really dark and demented too. So I really like kind of that dynamic of this film of these two parents who really want to raise a child, but he's evil and dark and has sinister intentions and stuff. And I just thought the whole thing worked. So I thought Elizabeth Banks and David Denman did a very good job in this movie. There's also a lot of scenes here where they find ways to add like creepy details, like this kid kind of adding his initials to kills, or putting his initials on like a airplane that crashes and stuff like that. Um, just stuff that really adds kind of to the creepier dimension of the movie. So I thought that was very effective. Found ways to add those creepy details, and like I said, it was very effective for this movie. I also thought this film had a good use of its 91-minute runtime. It is a very short feature-length film, but for being 91 minutes, it really does fit in a lot of things. It really does take good use of its time and things like that. So I was really impressed with what they were able to get away with within a 91-minute runtime, because they really do accomplish quite a bit in this movie. The film also does accomplish a sense of beauty and eeriness that farmlands can offer. Whether it is the beautiful landscapes of a really nice sunny day and kind of looking at the fields and looking at everything kind of growing and being active in a farm and stuff like that, while also kind of showing us when this kid's doing really demented, messed up things, that how it can kind of turn that once beautiful farmland into something creepy and sinister and dark and just uncomfortable to be around. So I thought that aspect of the film was handled very well with its setting. For my negatives of Brightburn, though, even though it is kind of a superhero film put into the horror genre, it really is not very scary. There's scenes here where you kind of feel worried for certain characters and their situation, but it's really not a very scary film. There's certainly moments that get very dark in this film. It's a very violent film, too. I will add that in there. But it's just really not very scary. There's really not a lot of moments here where I really felt scared while watching it necessarily. I'm also worried that this film, without going into spoilers, it's trying to kind of set up a franchise. I really am worried that this might be like the first of many about like an evil Batman or an evil Wonder Woman or like an evil Flash or Aquaman at some point. I don't want this to become that really. I think it works for this. I think it works for an overall Superman story one time kind of thing. So I really hope that it's not about, like evil Batman, evil Wonder Woman, evil Flash. Like, I don't really want like an evil Justice League here and maybe like an assembly film later on. I don't want Brightburn to become that. I really think it does deserve to be a one individual single film. If we do get anything, maybe a sequel if they find something interesting to do with it. But as a franchise, it's a no-go from me from that department anyway. I also thought this film was really nothing too inventive for superhero films. The film Unbreakable, for example, really kind of put you through a completely different lens for superhero stories, and really kind of really not clarifying if it's a superhero film or not until the end of that film. I don't really think Brightburn really did anything like that. It really wasn't super inventive. There really wasn't anything here where super surprising, I guess is the best word to say. There just really wasn't enough inventive things about it to really make it stand out like an Unbreakable or a Kick Ass or something along that line. This film is also somewhat predictable too. There's a lot of moments here where the friend of mine and I that saw this film together, we really kind of predicted most of the story points for the most part. Once again, there's really just not a lot of surprises here in this movie, so a little predictable at times, and that aspect of the film was a little disappointing. I do also overall think this film has way too many Superman elements. It just goes back to Superman way too many times. It really is a hard film to kind of watch without thinking about Superman or separating yourself from the Superman story. It really is one too many of that story involved here. I understand if they want to reference it and homage it, but I really feel like it's just Superman with more evil things than we're used to for a Superman story kind of thing. I also thought this film had a lot of gross out moments just for the sake of it. I'm really not a big fan of that in general, but I really do feel there's moments here where it's just kind of there to gross you out, just to gross you out and really not scare you or make the situation dark. So there's a lot of that in this movie. So if you are really not into that at all, there is a lot of moments in that in Brightburn, so just be careful of that if you do choose to watch this film. So I'm going to give overall for Brightburn 8.5 out of 10. I think it's very good. I think it's very good when it really knows what it wants and it wants to be something different, and it has a lot of James Gunn isms. It has the whole evil take on Superman in the right direction kind of thing. But it really is not very scary. It's really not a very inventive film. It really doesn't add anything to the superhero film genre to me, really. It really is kind of predictable at times. It really does borrow from the Superman story a little too much. And there's just a lot of moments here that are just a little too gross for their own good, and they're just kind of there to kind of gross you out, and that's it. And if it does become a franchise, I just really hope they're careful and don't make like a evil Justice League or an evil DC universe out of this or anything like that. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. Really like Brightburn. I do recommend this movie, but go into this film knowing that it's not perfect. There's a lot of good things about it, but there's also a lot of bad things about it. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. It does get my recommendation for Brightburn.